There's the story that people tell, and then there's the truth that really matters. Welcome to the Growth Obsessed podcast, real and raw conversations on leadership, business, and the relentless pursuit of growth. No fluff, no highlight reels, just the struggles, the setbacks, and the lessons that build true success. I'm Ben Lang, and I sit down with the most driven entrepreneurs and leaders to really uncover what shapes them, the pain, the resilience, and the breakthroughs. So if you're here, you're not just looking for surface level motivation, you are here to be challenged and to grow. So let's get real, let's get uncomfortable. This is the Growth Obsessed podcast. And don't forget to subscribe now. The conversation that you need might be the one that changes everything. Today, I've got a dear friend with me. His name is Isaiah Colton. Super successful guy. I mean, just has been a mentor to me for many years. And I really look up to this guy. I mean, he's done some unbelievable things in the tech industry and the real estate industry. So without further ado, Isaiah Colton. Isaiah, you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, thanks, Ben, to having me to this podcast. And I love the authenticity about it because I think the world's sick of the highlight reels on social media and they want to know real talk and they want real advice. So I commend you for doing this podcast. It's really awesome. As far as a little bit about me, 20-year sales and marketing career with multiple different industries. The first 10, I worked primarily as the VP of sales and marketing for two different companies, helping them build out an inside sales and marketing team. Really had a ton of success in that. And then along the way, I would do some fix and flips and really gotten in the investor side of real estate. I remember doing my first yellow letter back in 2011. And I remember just letting that first couple $1,000s just go out of my hands, what it felt like and how nervous I was. Like, it was the first time I had really spent money out of, to reinvest back into a business, so to speak, like that. And then all of a sudden, the phone started ringing, like, a couple of days later from the mailer went out, and I got hooked on just the whole idea of lead generation and just the possibility of real estate. And I started developing really amazing relationships with just awesome realtors locally, where if I couldn't invest in the property, I would refer it out to them. And fast forward about 3.5 years later from that point, I'm making high six figures, kid on the way. And but I was just very to the point where I was very frustrated and dissatisfied with where I was, not because I wasn't fulfilled, but because of the leadership. And I'm the type of person that, and this is kind of real talk for this podcast, sometimes even when things are good, you have to stick with your principles. And that's gotten me, it's got me pretty far in life. It was a really tough decision because I made a commitment to myself that if I had to take a pay cut when the company continued to do well one more time, and he kept bringing in family, and there was layers of nepotism that kept layering in on this particular corporation, that I was going to leave. And it happened again. He didn't believe me, I don't think, because he thought I was out of my mind, and I was 24, 25 at this point. Where are you going to go making the kind of money that I was making? It was in his mind, but he didn't know I had balls of steel. So, so in other words, like, if I believe in something, it doesn't matter. I'm willing to go for it. And so my wife gave me 6 months. She's like, all right, you're going to go do something. Just if it's in 6 months, if it starts going south, right, and our bank account goes down to a certain level, I just ask you don't put our family in jeopardy, right? And so 2014, actually, we started an independent real estate brokerage, and the goal is actually designed to grow a brokerage and a referral company simultaneously. And it was around that time that you and I had met. it's hard to believe that we've known each other and worked together for over 10 years now, but that's when you and I had met. And I was very fortunate to just have the gift of sales and marketing kind of in my background. And so we got really good at lead generation and using inside sales agents to grow our brokerage and our referral program. And we were blessed to have tremendous success. About fast forward about 4 years later, we ended up doing about $15 million in revenue. And we had a hit number 308 on the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies. And boy, as good as that sounds, do I have some arrows in my back from that experience that we'll probably end up talking about. Fast forward today, I own a holding company called REN that has multiple different companies in it with different ventures. My most passionate one that I'm personally focused on right now is the AI employee and smart CRM that we've developed, and how it's helping realtors and small business owners just get tremendous leverage in booking appointments without them having to chase leads down. So yeah, that's kind of kind of a trail into a little bit about me and where I'm at today.
Love it. Yeah, I actually, I flew out to New York in 2014 and wanted to see your operation, and it was quite a thing to see. And I just remember we connected, and I want to go back because you said your principles,
Yeah.
right? And you said put principles before the money. So what are those principles?
There's a lot of them, but I think the big one is that one big principle is I got to be around people that put values over profit. Meaning, like, when you're running a business, you gotta be profitable. So you have to make tough decisions, but there's got to be a sense of some sort of value based leadership. In other words, like you have a set of, like, when people talk about core values, like if the company, the person, the individual that I'm working with doesn't try their best to actually live by those core values, I'm out. Like if you like, and don't get me wrong, I have grace. No one's perfect. Like, everyone makes mistakes. Everyone slips in and out of their core values all the time. But when it becomes a point of repetition, you kind of become like the boyfriend that's being verbally abused by the girlfriend, or the girlfriend that's being verbally or physically abused by the boyfriend, right? And that's one thing that, for me, I'm hypersensitive to nowadays, and I'm analyzing and looking at, like, how do they act compared to what they say they do. And so that's a big one. And I'll tell you what, almost every time I've went against that core values instinct, it has burnt me hardcore, either mentally, physically, emotionally, or financially. And so I think that's the big one, as far as core values. And then there's a whole lot of sub values or sub principles that fall into that one. But I find that to be the biggest one.
Yeah. So what I heard you say was follow through and integrity. That's my highest, most regarded core value is integrity. I will only do business with people that follow through on what they say they're going to do.
Yep.
Another thing that I kind of heard you say, and I'm a firm believer in this: you invest in the people, not the business.
Yes.
Right. Or invest in the people, not the concept, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I've always invested in people over anything.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was listening to a short clip that Steve Jobs had when he was rebuilding Apple, and they asked him what he think was the difference this time around when he went back to Apple. And he said, he paused for, like, they at that, it was really awkward, actually, because they asked him the question and he paused for like 15 seconds. Now count 1, 2, 3. And he, like, literally paused for 15 seconds. And the crowd is just like, is this guy going to talk? But he's sitting there, like, really thinking about the question. And he said this, he goes, my view on people and who I'm going to be around with in my life has changed dramatically, where I have a 10-year view on people. In other words, I ask myself, what does this relationship look like a decade from now? And oftentimes that said, hey, how do I help them become their full potential? Because he viewed it differently. It wasn't about fixing the problem in the moment. It was about how do you equip people to have to reach their full potential in the next 10 years. And he said that dramatically changed their culture, who they recruited, who they were around. And I just thought that was really, really powerful. So that kind of ties into what you're saying. And
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
yep.
People are, it's, and I've had partnerships in the past, and I know you've had several partnerships, and I'm sure that you have some disaster stories
Oh, big
with
time.
those with
Big
those
time.
partnerships,
No doubt
right?
about it.
It's like dating.
Mm-hmm.
People will show you what you want to see, and you don't really get to know them until they're living at your place, and you see they throw their dirty underwear on the
That's right.
floor, and
You're
and
living
leave
the daily grind together, right?
the toothpaste
Yeah.
cap is off. They're
Yeah.
it's the same kind of thing, right?
Yep.
So funny, and it's so true. Like I love that he said that. Like you look a decade through, right? And it also, like, how could you bring them to the top? Because I'm a firm believer that you get paid at the rate in which you can solve problems,
So true.
and your
Yep.
income is directly correlated to how big of the problem you can solve. But I also believe, as in leadership, it's it's kind of the same but also true. You get paid in direct correlation to how much you can get someone to step outside their comfort zone, right? To push their own boundaries. And I think that's a huge part in leadership, is how, and not push in a bad way, but really, like,
Yeah.
make people get out of their own way.
Yeah.
It is probably a good way to put it. So no matter, whether you're an entrepreneur in solving problems, or a leader in solving problems maybe for other people to really help them get out of their own way,
Yeah.
I am a firm believer that your income is directly tied to that either way.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. I have a lot of stories around um, either partnerships or building teams where when you stick to a standard, the power of like what happens, and also the what you uncover by sticking to that standard, and also when you don't, when you compromise the standard, and then you go back and try to fix it, like how damaging that can be. And I'll just tell you a couple war stories on that. So um, my my past partner, so we have in Ren, one of our divisions is Ren Home Advisors. It was called Realty Home Advisors then, and we were building out our residential real estate brokerage, and uh, we were recruiting like at a really fast pace. We were growing really nicely, and my previous partner had passed away from, unfortunately, he had a drug overdose. He was keeping it secret. He didn't really tell anybody that he had a problem. He was what I call a functioning drug addict. And so he had passed away. And so I brought in another partner, um, referred, referred to me. Things were going really, really well. And then we started making some pretty good money. We had a teamage within the brokerage. So yet we had people coming independent, and then we had a team, and that team got up to close to that, about 20, 25 people at any given time. And then we had a proposal on the table for um, we had a proposal on the table for to potentially merge with another brokerage in Florida. And so we were thinking about working that out. And that was kind of something that I was excited about, but kind of, just feeling out. And the gentleman that we were going to merge with, he flew up, and not a bad guy, but just a wild man without like any standard. And so so we went to kind of try to go do the deal and get close to it, but a lot of it, that wasn't the only reason, but that was a big part of it. I backed out of that particular deal, and my current partner was pissed off, and he could not let it go. He just couldn't let it go, and it was in his head. And then the problem is one, and this is one of our code of values, is that whenever you have a problem, you deal with it directly. You don't let it harbor it. You deal with the person directly about it. And he never talked about it directly, that he had this big of a problem with it. It was more of like an attitude thing. But for me, I probably should have addressed it and like talked to him and had to sit down and try to work it out, because I sensed something was there, but I was ignoring it. Whether that be subconsciously or consciously, maybe a little bit of both, giving the excuse of being too busy, and then we had this meeting, and we're going over numbers, and there was an issue with some of the numbers. We kind of had a meeting that was a little bit like direct with some of the agents that were on the team, nothing too crazy, but it was kind of a reflection of his individual leadership, because he was not holding up to his part of the contract. And one of the things that had happened about a week later is I got a phone call, and he said, "F you, I'm out." And I'm like, "What?" And then he hung up, and I tried calling him back. And I had been with this guy for almost 5 years now. I mean, we broke bread together, had great conversations, made a lot of money together. And so I started doing a little bit of investigation, and then I kind of kept my ear to the ground. And what had happened was he actually went around me. He tried to redo the deal with the other guy. And he did. He actually worked out an arrangement with the other guy, and then started recruiting all of the people from the brokerage, going against his, our partnership agreement, because that was in his agreement that a certain period of time that if he left, we couldn't compete with each other, and it was a mutual agreement, so it was fair. And then we got into this big nasty lawsuit where I had to put a cease and desist on him, because he was literally like tearing out the whole, like everything we built over the past 5 years right from underneath me. And but I look back at that, and at first I blamed him, and I thought he was a royal asshole, right? And my energy was going towards him, right? And just how everything was his fault. But then if I just did any self-reflection at all, and I just took a step back and I asked myself, what could I have done different? And if I was honest with myself, I should have stopped. And when I sensed that he had an issue, I should have said, "Hey, so, I don't want to say his name in case this ends up somewhere where, but I said, "Hey, let's talk this through. What are you feeling? How you feeling about this? I'm sensing something's going on." And no, maybe it was not recoverable. Maybe something still would have happened, but I can tell you what, I've had some people that have reached out to me when I've been feeling some sort of way, and just the fact that they showed that they cared enough was all I needed. Or maybe there was some other solution, or maybe there's something else. And I uncovered the fact that the deal that he worked out with this guy was absolutely ridiculous. It was horrible. It was more of like just a vendetta type of thing. It wasn't even a smart deal for him long term. Short term, he's going to put some extra buck in his pockets, but and then fast forward 2 years later, that whole thing fell apart and he ended up getting screwed. And so it didn't work out for him. And now we're on speaking terms again, but my whole point is I don't know how that whole thing could have shaken out if I just slowed down. So if you're building a team, there's a lot of lessons there. We have a lot of team members that maybe there's a lot of emotional impact conversations. When you have a partnership, spouse, wife, business partnership, if you're sensing little things, you can't ignore them. You can't let them go because it turns into a medium-sized thing and then a big thing. And next thing you know, your partner's out the door.
I just experienced this myself too.
Oh, did you?
Okay. Yeah. Like in the last 3 months.
Right.
I could tell that the energy was off and I should have had a conversation and I don't know why I didn't. And it's so silly, right? Because like we were friends too.
Right.
And I could tell like, he's just not like digging the role. Maybe, right guy, wrong role.
Right.
And it could have probably had a way different outcome. But what I noticed is you took personal accountability. And it wasn't the blame game or the victim game, right? And that's a reoccurring theme on this show with a lot of successful people that I speak to. And so I want to bring that out because every person that I've talked to that has talked about failure or, something bad that has happened to them has said on this show, oh man, like I even had one professional woman that I love who was in a physically abusive relationship. And she even said on here, like, I had to take a deep, hard look, like, because I was in a couple abusive relationships. So like, okay, what, and that's like personal accountability to the extreme, maybe. But it still shows a trend, right?
Yep. Yep. And, I think that though it's not always fun, it's what you have in your control. Right. And, I think that if you look at the most successful people that I know, they are extremely self-aware. Like it's their number one priority to be self-aware. And actually, I don't remember the exact study or reference of it, but I know Harvard actually looked at like the top 500 entrepreneurs in the world, and that was like a reoccurring theme of the number one characteristic that kept revealing itself is being self-aware and personal accountability. Just over and over and over again.
It's a well-proven fact that more millionaires have a much higher EQ or emotional intelligence than they do an IQ.
Yeah, so true.
The money, the money really comes with a high level of emotional intelligence and being able to not be reactive and have that self-awareness.
That's good.
Being able to have a tough conversation, which I lacked just in this last few months. I lacked the ability, and maybe not because I was scared of it, but I kept putting it off. But it should have been done, like a tough conversation, right? That can be done in a very loving way, like you mentioned earlier. It doesn't have to be like this battle.
I think that's an important point, Ben, is because a lot of times we might put it off is because we think that's what it, like we play it out in our minds as something that's going to be worse than it is. So subconsciously we put it off.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
It's this weird dynamic and dichotomy because then it ends up being worse than it probably was by putting it off. So it's like, it's so crazy.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I also heard you talk about standards, and wise person once told me that standards aren't actually what you maybe put in your SOPs and your handbook, but they're actually just what you will allow in your organization. Give me some examples of maybe where you had to learn that the hard way.
Oh my gosh, I got a long laundry list of them. Uh, I'll try to do it by functional impact area so we can really have some fun with this. So what I do is, if you look at any successful 7-figure plus business, if you can will your way there to a certain point, and then you just get stuck. And then what ends up happening is, one of my favorite quotes by James Clear says, is you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And so, like, how I define a system is a plan, and then the people, process, and tools that go into place to execute that plan. And so if you look at your business, let's just say it runs like a machine, or what I call a flywheel. There's different spokes or impact areas of your business that make that run well. And so the big ones, and there's subcategories to this, but the big impact areas of your business is your lead generation, or what some know as marketing, your sales, or what some knows as lead conversion, service, your tech, and your operations. And so before I was aware of this, basically I was the motivational, the will guy, just push, and move things forward. And it'd get to a certain point in each functional area, and then it would just kind of stall out, and I didn't know why, or something would go wrong. And I was actually blessed to be coached on this concept that is similar to where somebody asked me, is like, well, where's the documentation on this? Like, in other words, like, I got mad at my marketing assistant because she did the lead generation activity the wrong way. And so my coach at the time was like, why are you mad at them? And I'm like, because I told them how to do it. I'm like, okay, well, how many times have somebody told you how to do something? And how much did you retain of it when you were told it? And he kind of made a funny joke of it. He goes, I didn't know that this was caveman by the fireplace where we told stories, and that's how we remembered everything. And I was like, he's like, so are you telling me that's your leadership style? Is that your the fireplace campfire story leadership style? And I was just like, wow, that's an interesting way to put it. And so what ended up happening from that point, in this particular case, we were spending a lot of money on paid ads, and I had thought that we were on the same page with the expectation and the best practices that we were agreeing on, and they weren't being followed. But I went over those best practices verbally, and they weren't documented, and they weren't turned into a standard operating procedure. And so therefore the standard wasn't met. So who do I get mad at? Do I get mad at the person, or do I get mad at myself? Now, it also goes the other way around. Is I don't want you guys, every leader, if you're listening to this and you're in leadership of every kind, having leadership isn't always about blaming yourself. It also, if you could have standard operating procedures in place, it also helps you identify people that shouldn't be part of your organization, because they're just not following through on what you talked about a million times. And so in this instance, I had to take personal accountability because there was nothing documented. So how can we expect to be on the same page? Right. And so, but I can give you another example where I've had really strong standard operating procedures in my sales process. And I've trained and coached to a 7-step sales process over and over and over again. And certain people have thrived with it, and certain people, they just refuse because of combination of their own ego or mental blockers or barrier belief systems or laziness, or combination of all of this weird cocktail of things that come across when it comes to people achieving performance, where after trying everything, even with a really strong training program, coaching program, and standard operating procedure, they just weren't the right person for my operation. And it identified itself so fast that it became not an emotional decision either for me or for them. Now, maybe it was a little bit, because it's always tough when you develop relationships with people, but you also get to the point where you could actually be hurting their future and hurting your own future if you continue the madness, doing the same thing over and over again, trying to get a different result, right? The craziness of that. And so that's a really good example. And then I've had some really really operationally costly decisions, and I can keep going through each division. If you're hiring and training people, it's so costly by not having really strong standards in place and documenting those standards and what you're willing to live with. So I could tell a lot more stories, but those are just a couple. Those are just a couple examples. But I can tell you some 6-figure losses because of not having a good standard operating procedure in place.
Yeah, and I think, as we move into the AI world, where we're going to be leading AI maybe just as much as human beings, we really need to have, so I'm always telling Lisa, like, okay, like, we just need to become this well-oiled machine that's completely systematized so that we can scale it rapidly.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We can maybe start another one in a different state.
Yep.
But like, you can't do any of that or go away for 3 months.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
enjoy life for a while.
You can't scale rapidly. You can't go away for 3 months, and you can't open another location in a different state without the well-oiled machine, which is all the operating procedures.
So
right?
True. It's so true.
And now with AI, it really, I think, is coming because we can have AI do so much now.
It's so insane what AI can do right now. It's crazy.
Tell me about it.
I woke up this morning to check in on my AI employee who's making my phone calls and doing my texts for my local real estate team. And it had set 15 follow-up appointments in 7 days. Or about in 6 days. So, and I look at, I used to, I still do pay because I still have inside sales agents, $3,000 to $4,000 base pays to get the same productivity every week. And so, another example is my AI employee is helping me produce a blog, a YouTube script, a 7 short form reels, 7 quote cards, memes, and all of that content is done through one prompt because I learned how to prompt it. And so I'm able to give it a problem, tell it the persona that I want it to be, and give it the different types of content that I want it to produce based on the problem, the persona, who my target audience is, and really refining this prompt. And now it produces all of those pieces of content with one prompt. Now, sometimes I have to go in and tweak it, right, a little bit, but I'm essentially producing content that would have taken me 4 hours to 5 hours to write in 30 minutes. And my team then is taking the AI tools that both we have proprietary to ourselves and both that we use at our third party, and pumping out content that has just as good, if not better, quality than when we had a virtual assistant or an employee that had their bachelor's degree that working on that content. It's achieving the same goal, if not better outcomes. And the biggest problem I have is the emotional part about having to face the reality is that I don't need the same size team anymore. So those are just a couple examples of what it's doing. And just as a side note, I have a really powerful document that I can share with your audience on what that prompt is and what it looks like, and how to actually do prompting the right way. That's not complex and simple. to be able to do to share with your audience, and how to create that own content. It's something I'm looking forward to sharing with you and talking to you about as we move on to our other ventures that we're working
Yeah.
on. But those are just a
Yeah.
couple of examples. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And at the end, we'll get some, maybe a website or some place where someone could go fill out their information and grab it.
Cool. Sounds good.
What would you say to a real estate agent or a team lead or a real estate broker right now who's not going in all in on AI and really learning how to leverage it and being
Um,
resistant towards it?
yeah, it's a common thing. Um, I just did a I just did a AI boot camp for a gentleman, and as I was showing the AI work, literally the lady came off camera and was like, or came on camera, and she says, "Just so you know, in this demonstration, I'm going to role play with this, but I hate AI and I won't use it." And I'm like, "Okay, well, if you don't mind, ma'am, before I get into this role play with you and I actually have it start communicating with you, can we just kind of have some open dialogue in front of the crowd and see if it serves both you and the crowd?" And she goes, "Yeah, let's do it." And I said, "Okay, let me ask you, uh, at what point and what happened where you decided that you were not going to invest in AI to grow your business?" And so she kind of paused and she kind of was saying some things that, I don't mean in this in a mean way, but just were very much, you could tell, limiting belief kind of things coming out,
Mhm.
which is fair. It happens to the best of us. But one of the things she said is that, she said, "Well, I don't like the fact that it could eventually take my job, and also I don't think it's as good as me because I've heard some of these AIs and they suck." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, fair enough." And I said, "Okay, like, I appreciate that." And what I want you to ask yourself, ma'am, is like, how much do you think it'll cost you by not adopting AI over the next 2 years? And she goes, "I don't know." And I said, "Okay, well, when I give you the example that I just gave you," because I gave her the same example, I literally like went into my database and I literally showed the follow-up appointments that were booked. Like, I showed them with the recordings. And so I asked her, I said, "How much business, or like how many leads do you have in your database?" And she said like 4,000 or something like that. And I go, "Okay, well, you seem like you're very much relationship focused, and follow up is important to you, and stay in front of your leads and your database is important to you. I'd ask you to grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How good of a job are you staying in front of those 4,000 people?" And she goes, "Well, obviously, I can't be in front of 4,000 people. It's impossible." I said,
Not
"Agreed,
anymore.
100%. Like, before today, it was impossible. It is impossible for you personally, but it's not impossible for an AI employee." And I go, "Let me handle the second part of this, because maybe you heard a bad call, right?" And I go, "Ma'am, have you ever done any prospecting before in your life?" "Well, yeah." I go, "Have you ever had a bad call?" "Well, yeah, da 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 da, but it's this and that and da da da." "Have you ever hired an agent on your team that maybe didn't work out?" And she goes, "Well, yeah." And I go, "Well, here's the thing. AI is the same way. It's constantly evolving. It's changing. It's not perfect, but choosing not to use it because it's not perfect is kind of like saying, I'm never going to purchase a lead again in my life because every lead that I'm purchasing is not perfect." You just wouldn't do that. That would be insane to even say out loud. And so I said, um, and so I said, the other thing is too, is when like, what is your alternative to work your database? What's your alternative right now? Because those leads are going to somebody else. Like, people think that their database is their own leads, and I hope everyone hears this loud and clear. There's no such thing as your own database. It's bullshit. Because those leads, even your sphere of influence, are sitting in somebody else's database. So my biggest fear is not like, am I going to upset 3 people because I'm doing marketing a certain way? Like, I get it. Nobody wants to upset anybody. Nobody wants them to get rejected. Nobody wants to get, people opt out of their text messages or have opt-outs of, but here's the thing. My bigger fear is I didn't even have a chance to let them say no to me. I didn't have systems in place to let them opt out is my biggest fear, because that means my competitor most likely is going to get that transaction because I have no chance.
Not when you have multi-million-dollar companies that are doing the nurturing the right way.
The right way.
Like the one that starts with a Z.
Right.
That, takes an internet lead that maybe cost them like $3 a year ago.
And they're nurturing
They
the heck
did
out of it.
such a good job nurturing it. They sell it to you for $500.
$500, dude. Exactly. So
all we have to do is replicate, right? It's more about the nurture than the lead
it's
gen
all about the
now.
nurture. It's all about the
I mean,
nurture.
maybe like 10 years ago, it was like really tough to generate a lead.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that difficult to generate a
Oh
lead now.
gosh. Look, you can generate leads in 24 hours and through 7 different ways. Like, it's the lead generation game has changed dramatically. It's all about having systems that in place to follow up until they're ready to work with you. It's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about this, because this will really kind of.
anyway, I did the role play with her and she was blown away, by the
Oh,
way. I had the AI role play with her and she's like, sign me up. Like, so, cause it's really easy to hear one bad thing or just to judge. Like, and look, I got in the game in AI so early on, it made me cringe. Like, and I'm like a forward thinker, but I'm like, you know what? I gotta keep pressing through and figure out how to make this work. I can't just be like, oh, it's not ready yet. Let me don't pay attention to it.
yeah. And I think it's incredibly important now. I wrote a post today on my Facebook about, it's always kind of been like the 80-20 rule, meaning, 20% of agents are doing 80% of the business.
Yep.
And I think it's really leaning more towards 95-5, or definitely 90-10, and inching up towards 95-5. I heard there's a couple interesting statistics. The existing U.S. home sales are the lowest they've been since 1995.
And that's insane.
And couple that with the fact that the population is actually 30% larger, which makes it even worse. Yeah. So, and then on top of that, I don't know the latest stat, but I know the end of Q1, I think it was 47% of licensed agents in the United States had not yet sold one home for the year.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
like,
I didn't know. I
things are
didn't remember the
getting
exact
tougher.
number, but I knew it was insanely high. Yeah.
Things are getting tougher, and I really think only the strong are going to survive this. I don't see it easing up anytime soon, as far as number of transactions.
Yeah. A stat that I just read about our local market. So, in what's considered desirable neighborhoods, we usually have around 4,000 active listings at all times. We're a smaller city, so that's not a big number compared to most cities, but extremely desirable areas to live. Like, we're top 2 or 3 in the country as far as rated suburbs, so they're very strong, desirable areas. But the inventory is where, fast forward 4 years ago or so, it used to be 3,500, 4,000. It's 400. right? 350 to 400 active listings right now at any given time. It's insane. So like, even if there's a recession, there's so much demand. You could build 1,000 homes every single year and still not keep up with the demand. It's just it's wild out there.
No, I
So
read that the millennial generation is only at 38% home ownership right now. They're way under where they should be. I mean, the boomer generation is like upper 60%, obviously, for home ownership.
right,
Millennials falling way behind at only 38%. And then you have like your Gen Xers, they're all coming into like diapers and diamonds right now.
right,
And
right, right.
and they're larger, they're larger than the boomer generation,
Yeah, a lot of
right?
people don't know that, but yeah, that's a massive. What is your opinion on what's going to happen with how they're going to affect the housing market? Do you have an opinion on that?
I think we're, I have a lot of clients that are moving to Texas right now, and a couple of my clients said they're building entire subdivisions with multi-generational homes that are built.
Wow,
They're building them specific
wow,
for multi-generational. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think a lot of like people that are coming into retirement haven't really saved adequately enough
right.
for retirement. I think there's just a lot of factors that are going to lead more towards multi-generational living situations.
That's really interesting. Huh.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, there's just so many unknowns.
Yep.
There's so many unknowns. I think, but I don't see any decline in the housing market for at least 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Me either. That's
Just
my
just
opinion.
because of the inventory, the shortage of
So short.
housing.
Yep.
I like, how could it? But you never know. I mean, like, listen, I tell my clients all the time because they ask me, "Hey, what do you think's going to happen?" And like, I'm like, man, if I knew the real answer to that, I'd be on my own desert island. I wouldn't be sitting
Exactly.
here with you.
Exactly.
But like, if somebody actually knew the
You.
outcome in 3 years, they'd be billion trillionaires, right?
Yep. In a huge way.
Um, let's go back to something you said at the very beginning, because I know I have a lot of agents that are dealing with this as well, with a spouse maybe that's like, hey, I'm gonna give you 6 months. If you don't start making money and you don't make this work in 6 months, like, you got to get a real job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So it's interesting that happened to you. Now, mentally, internally, like, what was your thought process? Like, what did you, number one, I want to know this. Did you have a backup plan?
So how I processed it was I always think about my absolute worst case scenario and I try to put myself there mentally. And if I can live with that, then um, I go full forward and I have no quote unquote backup plan. You can call that a backup plan. But I just try to imagine what that worst case scenario looked like. And for me, it would have set us maybe 2 or 3 years back. We would have lost, a lot of, if not all of our savings, um, leaving a six-figure career. But did I think I could have rebounded from it and been okay and find something that was equal or better to what I was already doing before I left? Absolutely. And so so in my head mentally, it was a greater risk for me to not. I would have rather lost $300,000-400,000 between the income and the transition and the whatever. I'd rather deal with that than not know. I think one of the things, if I'm just being real and truthful too, when you grow up poor and have nothing, and you know what it's like to live on government eggs and cereal, you know that, and you did okay, and you were still happy. When you had to put water in your cereal, and you found a way to still be happy and survive and be okay, and end up thriving, it gives you some sort of edge, I think. That's just my opinion. I don't know that scientifically or whatever, but like, I think that the horrible, some of the crazy stuff that I grew up with, that I persevered through, helped me through a lot of really tough times in my entrepreneurial career. That being one of them, where I'm not. So that's not. So I think that subconsciously or consciously I had a backup plan, if I'm going to be honest about it, but I didn't process through that it would be acceptable. I guess that is the best way I could explain it. And it's like it wasn't an option for me to not figure it out. I know that I know I can say that strongly in my mind and my head and my heart.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in backup plans. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
I think every time there's a backup plan, like you're just dipping your toe in the water, right? And I think for especially like this industry or any entrepreneurial
Yeah.
venture, it really, I don't know. You're a serial entrepreneur. Would you agree that it doesn't really work if you dip your toe in the water?
No, I've learned that I won't engage in a project unless I'm all in on it.
Mm-hmm.
I just won't do it. If I can't see myself doing it 5 to 10 years from now, or unless it's a very unique situation where it's designed to be short term, it's purposely like designed financially that way, whether it be like a fix or flip or an investment or a short term investment or whatever it may be, or I'm doing a loan to an individual. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about like if I'm putting my time and energy even over my money, and also too your money too. If it's not something that I believe that can be really beneficial over the long haul, I ain't doing it.
No.
It's just too much. Life's too short. Um, Unless it's something fun. Sometimes I just take stuff on because I like it and it's fun, and you got to do that too, right? So I don't know if that's a solid answer that anyone wants to hear, but I do have a rule of thumb is that unless I'm willing to give it all and really put the resources behind it, it's not worth doing. No toe dipping allowed.
Yeah.
And I'm
I heard you
experiencing
say,
that right now. I am all in on this AI venture, like in a crazy way. It's like in a crazy way, like taking probably it's the biggest financial investment that I've ever personally made. So I am extremely uncomfortable.
and that's where the growth happens,
Right.
in that
Yep.
uncomfortable state, right?
Yep.
You mentioned your childhood. I think I had a shitty childhood
Yep.
too. And I think that breeds grit.
Yeah.
And I think, me personally, I'd rather have a new agent, let's say, a new agent that I want to bring on, and I want to pour into them and invest into them. I'll take grit over personality,
Oh yeah.
charisma, talent, education, pretty much anything. I think everything can be coached except for grit.
I
What
agree
do you
with that
think?
100%.
Yep.
100%. I've met some of the most talented, eloquent, good-looking people. All the like just everything going for them, but they just did not have that desire or ability to be able to persevere through challenges. And you
Hunger,
can't
passion.
freaking coach that.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, well, that one time. Yeah, that one time that you figure like that person did it, there was 100 others, right? That
Yeah.
that didn't work out. So
Yeah. Tell me if, and you have a lot of accolades and accomplishments. if we take all the accolades and the accomplishments away, who's Isaiah Colton at his core?
Uh, Isaiah Colton, that's a really good question. Isaiah Colton at his core has a burning desire to be the best version of himself he can be, with the biggest fear at his deathbed, not becoming everything and not being able to live up to his God-given talents.
I love that.
And then behind that is sharing those gifts with as many people that I possibly can along the way, is my true desire, where I can have an impact on somebody personally or professionally. And that's really who Isaiah is. And that actually starts with my faith in my family and friends, and then business colleagues, in that order. So
Yeah.
that's really who I am today. I've learned to enjoy by almost by force, because like there's certain things that just take time. If you're trying to do anything meaningful, it takes time, no matter how much you try to push it forward. And so I've learned to really enjoy what's happening in the moment, and just being okay with the emotion of it, good, bad, or indifferent, and to learn to appreciate it. And I think it's put me in a really powerful place, that even though over the past 3 years I've had absolutely chaotic things happen to me from every direction, it's kept me strong.
Yeah. Last question for you.
Yeah.
I wrote a letter. Well, it was a text message. I mean, I don't know if we write letters these days.
Yeah.
Text message to my daughter, and I said, "Hey, I really want you to know, if you can master these three things, and you
Mm,
start mastering them now, and you're only 13, but like, really listen to me for 1 second. Like,
yeah.
if you master these three things in life, you'll be successful no matter what you do, what you decide to do. And I don't care what you do. I just want you to be happy,
Right.
and be passionate about it, and wake up every day and love it." Um, how old is your son now?
13. Yeah.
Oh, same age. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, so if you were going to give the same advice to him, and whether he was going, and let's just say he wants to be an entrepreneur, he wants to do something in business. What are those three things you tell him to start mastering right now?
The first one is that you're nothing without your habits and your routines. And I've drilled that into him in a really big way. Um, and I've really showed him the power. I've tried to lead by example on that. And so I think that whatever you're trying to achieve personally, professionally, doesn't matter what it is. If your habits and routines don't reflect what you're trying to achieve, then it's really just a wish. It's not a goal. So that's the first one. I actually heard this really good quote. I forget who said it, but he said the quote goes, um, "Your calendar is a mirror of what you actually care about."
I like that. I've never heard that.
Your calendar is a mirror image of what you're actually looking to achieve. So look in the mirror. So instead of actually looking in a mirror and looking at ourselves, look at your calendar, look in the mirror, because that's going to be a reflection of what you're going to get out of your personal life or your business life. And so anytime I'm coaching or training anybody, and if I'd give the same advice to my son, is what's in your calendar, and that's a reflection of what you're going to get out of your life. So that's the first thing. I think the next one is identity. Nature and nurture is a crazy thing. So a lot of us end up with positive things that come out of that. with our identity and negative things, but I don't care who you are. Most likely, if you're trying to go to the next level and whatever you're trying to do, it's going to require you to develop a different set of skills and therefore change your identity of who you are and who you can become. And if you don't, you probably won't go to the next level, or you'll get stuck. At my one of my favorite personal development coaches, or gurus, if you will, he said, I don't want to mess it up. He said, you'll never outperform the identity that you have for yourself. And so I think it's really important to teach our kids and to instill in them, regardless of what they're doing, a lot like if you're a spiritual person, how God speaks to us and sees us. He doesn't see us as we are. He sees us in the moment as who we can be. So I try my best. I'm tough on my son, but I try my best to instill him an identity that is one of purpose, one of power, one that will help him succeed in life. And anytime he says anything that's contradictory, like, oh, I don't like dancing, I'm not good at it. I said, that's because you chose to be. But if you say to yourself, you're going to be a good dancer, you could go watch YouTube videos and you could do 3 dance moves and be better than most people dancing, because you only need to know 3 moves, because most people never try past that. And he's like, oh, okay. So just those things is just really working on identity. And for our world, if you say to yourself, well, I'm horrible at follow-up, well, you're concreting the fact that you're going to continue to be horrible at follow-up. You know, I can't control my eating. Well, you're making that even more real than it already is. So reframe it. So that's the third one. And I think the fourth one would be is work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Work harder on yourself. And it goes back to the first 2, where like, if you make a commitment, everyone thinks like, if I just learn how to do YouTube, or if I just learn how to do this one thing, or they're all caught up in the how of things. The how is actually the easier part. It's the other things, like the who and the what, and you can't really do good on who and the what if you can't get past the fact that you don't need to know the how. So it becomes a mental thing, right? And that mental thing starts with how you're developing yourself and how you think and your skills. And so Jim Rohn was famous for saying that. He's no longer with us today, but he was one of the probably top 5 personal development business leaders in the world over the past decade or 2. And I take that to heart. So that's what I have my son do. I actually have him look at he has what's called a wheel of life. And he grades himself and he scores himself on his health, on his relationships, on his finance, on his career. It's a school right now for the most part, and a little side project that he's got going on. Then a few other areas in his life, and he journals on it every day, and he identifies places that he can improve. And I just have him getting in the habit of doing that every single week. And I think that's the best that I can give him. If I just give him habits, routine, identity, and then help him develop a system where he can work harder on himself than whatever he's trying to pursue, and whatever that is, he'll end up being great at it.
Really good advice. That's solid. Really solid. If someone wants to reach out to you or know more about your AI assistant, or maybe some free guides that you might have available, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, we got something really special going on. So you can go to the AI website is ren360.io. So ren360.io, and you can start a light user, no credit card required. And one of the things that we're doing right now is we actually give you done for you blogs, sales automation sequences, social media posts, and it's no cost at all. Just by doing the free account, you get that every single month that will come to your inbox. Just for starting a free account, no credit card required, to check out the software and to learn and see if any one of the packages are for you or not. The worst case scenario, you can use the CRM, 100% free forever.
Free CRM?
Free CRM.
Oh, wow.
Yep. No AI employee, but free CRM. Yep.
That's awesome.
So yeah. So ren360.io, you can go and check it out.
Isaiah, appreciate your time today. Again, dear friend, look up to you. You're a solid dude, and
You too, brother.
glad to have you. Glad to have you in my life.
Yeah, you too. And I'm just really excited to see what's happening with your brokerage, and anybody that has a chance to be a part of your brokerage. They shouldn't take that for granted, because there's not a lot of people that care as much as you do and that pour into the systems and trying to create an opportunity as you do. So I awesome. I'd be back on the podcast anytime you want me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.